Hello and welcome to my first ever podcast, vlog, whatever we're going to call it. It is as yet unnamed, but I will come up with a name before and if I upload it to YouTube, as is my intention. I'm here today to talk to you about my love of knitting, yarn, fiber, and I'm about to embark on a spinning journey as well. So after much procrastination and wondering if I want to try and join the wonderful community of knitting podcasters, I just decided that if I'm going to do it, now is a good time to do it. I would like to document my foray into processing wool and spinning right from the beginning, so this is the time to do that. A little bit about myself, just because this is the first episode, the first time I'm talking to a camera. My name is Janine. I was born and raised in the northwest of England, in the county of Cheshire, right on the border with, or close to the border with Derbyshire. So in one direction I had larger towns, Manchester being the largest one, and then the other direction, nothing but rolling hills and beautiful, beautiful English countryside. Sheep everywhere, but I did not enjoy that connection between yarn and sheep back then. But a lot of sheep where I grew up. I learned to knit at a pretty young age, as a lot of people do, with first one grandma, who I called Nan, and then my second Nan. They both knit. The Nan who initially taught me to knit definitely was the more consistent knitter and a garment knitter. She knit my brother and I sweaters when we were younger. I remember two beautiful intarsia sweaters when I used to ride horses with horse head on the front. Too bad I don't still have those, but I loved them, really loved them. And I don't even really remember my other Nan knitting for herself, but for a while I knitted with both my Nans. We used to make a lot of different toys, teddy bears and a series of clowns and dolls and other such things that I then went on to sell to raise money for charity. I kind of had a thing for raising money for charity when I was younger, so that was something we did. And actually I still have a lot of those things that we knit, the ones that did not sell. I don't unfortunately have any clowns, but I have a doll, couple of dolls, and some small items. So maybe if I do this again, I will do a little show and tell with those, because that was always a lot of fun growing up, working on those. Then I had a hiatus from knitting, as a lot of people do. I think I was maybe around the age of 22, 23, and maybe a little older, 24, 25. I picked it back up again briefly. I knit a couple of small blankets. I'm not sure why. I just wanted to knit something and it seemed accessible. I tell you why. I went into the Mermaid's Pearl, which still exists, a beautiful knitting store in Rhode Island. Warwick, Rhode Island? I often get it wrong. I'll check, but I think Warwick, Rhode Island. And the store owner is on Instagram. She's fabulous. At the time when I went in, she was in a different location than she is now, but a beautiful little store. And she had a lot of really nicely knit samples. And one of those samples was a blanket, essentially a baby blanket. I didn't have a baby, didn't know if I was going to have a baby, didn't know anybody that was having one, but I figured it's a practical thing to knit. I'm sure I could gift it at some point, or maybe use it myself at some point. not for myself, but if I ever had children, which I don't. But anyway, I still have both those blankets, and now the cat sleeps on them. So they've lasted well. I think after that I didn't knit again for a while, and then I was in Portland, Maine, and found a yarn store. It could have been Knitwit yarn store, but in my mind it was somewhere else. I'm not sure. But I found a yarn store in Portland, and I bought some yarn, some wool, and randomly made 3 of the same cowl pattern, but each in a different color, to give to my mom and my 2 aunts for Christmas one year. And as I understand, my one aunt still has hers and wears it. She does a lot of hiking at all times of the year back in England, and she still wears it. I'm not sure about my mom and my other aunt. And then I also knit a sweater with some yarn I bought in Belfast, Maine. I've worn it once. Maybe I'll show that one time too. It is a bizarre mix of colors. I was clearly having a very colorful day at the time. It was not a color combination that I ordinarily would put together under any circumstances. I clearly was just in the moment, loving life, and essentially it's a fun, pretty bright green color with then some very variegated, not really self-striping, but kind of yarn that I did collar and cuffs and hem in. Purples, pinks, blues, you name it. It's a very multicolored sweater. Anyway, I wore it once in North Carolina, and I still have it, but not my finest piece, let's just say that. I left England when I was 19 to go traveling, backpacking, exploring, see what happened, and I ended up in the States, and I've lived in South Florida since 2000. So I've spent more than half my life now in America versus in England where I grew up. I like it here. Florida is not the most ideal place to live if you love knitting, just because I guess in the air-conditioned spaces a lot of people still wear sweaters and cardigans and shawls and things, but I'm always a hot person in general, so I'm never cold in the air conditioning. I don't need knitted sweaters and things in Florida, but I do still travel pretty often, and often to cooler locations, so I do wear my knitwear any chance I get. And I do knit year round. It doesn't matter what the weather is outside, I still knit because I love it. I'm not wearing any today because I am sitting in the air conditioning, and as I just said, I'm usually always on the warm side. I have 3 recently finished objects, so that's what I'm starting with today, just because I'm sure you don't want to see my entire knitted wardrobe the first episode, but these are the 3 things that have been finished in the last couple months. I purchased most of my patterns through Ravelry, and I love going on Ravelry, checking for yarn combinations and patterns and such, but I don't ever post any of my projects on there. I probably should, but it just seems like one more thing online to do, and there's enough things already, so I don't post on there. I've been neglecting putting them on Instagram too of late, just because I have a personal page that feel like not everybody might want to see my knitting all the time. I have a lot of other interests too. I love to bake sourdough bread. I travel, I read. Knitting is my main hobby, let's be honest, but I tend to put all things on my Instagram page, and all of my knitwear does not make it there, although I am going to try and be better about putting it on there. I usually always add it to my stories, but then not on my page. I like having a record though of what I've made and when I made it. So I do have a little book that I've put together over the last few years of a lot of the projects I've worked on. I've not been up to date and kept all of them in there, but a lot of them I have put in there, just with the needle sizes that I've used, the yarn that I've used. I've printed off a couple pictures that I've taken and put them in there. And I would like to stay much more on top of that. And I also want to make, I'm kind of disappointed by my book choice in that it's pretty small, and I feel like it just is not laid out in the way that I would like it to be laid out. And I had one idea in the beginning, and then of course you always think of extra things that you want to add to it, and things that if you did it again maybe you do it a little differently. So I'm gonna stick with that one until it's done. But I would like to also start one for spinning, and I want to think about it before I just dive right into that, just so that I can get the layout how I want it, close to how I want it from the beginning, because I would like to record quite a lot of information in there, especially as I'm learning in the beginning stages, because I don't know what I'm doing. And I think it would be fun to really keep a track of how things are going and things that I find that I like or don't like, where I buy things from. I would just like to record all of that. I don't record much in my daily life. I don't keep a diary or a journal, but I think a knitting and a spinning diary would be both useful for me and something that I would enjoy looking back on in the future. I do enjoy looking back on my knitting projects, so I think I'm gonna stay with working on those. Okay, I think I will talk about my recently finished objects. I have a couple of acquisitions. We'll just keep going. Okay, so this was the one that I finished the longest ago, let's say. And I think I finished this probably December time, maybe November. And this is the Highland Slipover by Ozetta. And as you'll see, I like Ozetta patterns. This was the first Ozetta pattern that I've done. And it's very unusual for me, but I have not actually washed and blocked this. I usually do that as soon as I've finished knitting on something, but I might make some changes to this one, and so I think that's why I haven't done it yet. Anyway, it was just folded in my closet, so I'm sorry that it's a little wrinkly. But this is the Highland Slipover by Ozetta. I made it somewhat cropped. One of the things that I don't love that I did, it was not her thing. I was supposed to go down a needle size for the, as usual, for the hem and the ribbing. And I don't always like going down a needle size for the hem, because I don't like things that are too cinched in around my waist. However, on this, it needed to have gone down a needle size. It's pretty wide still at the bottom. So I am going to go down, I'm going to undo it and go down a needle size. I also might still add a little bit more length to it. And the other thing I'm thinking about doing, which is why I haven't washed and blocked it, is I like this as it is, and it does sit okay on me. I feel like I have pretty broad shoulders, and I don't want them to feel broader. I think this will flatten out when I wash and block it. I'm really tempted to add sleeves to this thing, because I think it would be more flattering, and I think I would get more use out of it with sleeves, and then make another slip over that kind of ends here. I purposely made this one because I thought I didn't want one that went like this shape, but now that I have this on here, or I don't have it on. Now that I have this finished, I think maybe my drop shoulder doesn't drop far enough, and so I don't know. I absolutely love the fabric. The fabric, or my yarn choices for this was a deep stash dive on some Cascade 220 non-superwash. No, that's a lie. No, it's not. This is a Cascade yarn, but it's the Llamarino, and it's 50% wool, 50% llama. I absolutely love it. It knit up, it is so much nicer than it is in the skein, and it is so soft. And I have paired this with a silk mohair, and I don't remember the brand off the top of my head. It's not a mainstream one or anymore. It's not. I think it's discontinued. I will put it in the show notes if I figure out how to make show notes. But I love this mohair too, and the fabric together, super soft, super warm, and I like the color. The color of the Llamarino is almond, I believe. I think it just has a number, but if you look next to the number, there is a name, and it's maybe 02, or it's a low number, almond. And then it was just a light beige silk mohair. I've already bought excuse me, I've already bought more Llamarino yarn. That's how much I like it. I don't have the mohair to go with it yet. I bought Llamarino in the colorway Squirrel. I love squirrels. Speaking of which, I'm drinking a Yogi lemon ginger tea in this cute squirrel mug that my friend gave me last year for Christmas. He has little pine cones in his tail. And I have 2 of these mugs, and they just make me smile. He's holding a little acorn. We have a lot of squirrels. We don't have much wildlife here in Florida, but, well, where I live, but we have a lot of squirrels, and we love watching them in our yard. So I bought the squirrel colorway, and I don't yet have a mohair to pair it with, but I'm probably going to buy one of the Knitting for Olive colorways, just because I really like that yarn, and she has great colorways and something that will go really nicely with it. The next finished object, this may all get frogged yet. I can't make my mind up about this. I am not a black yarn person. I bought this, this is Lettlopi, and I have another sweater made out of Lettlopi. I love it. I bought this on a whim. I don't know why I chose black yarn. As I say, I don't really wear black every once in a while, but I have nothing else knit in black yarn. I very much tend to natural earth tones, sometimes jewel tones, but they muted colors. I like muted earthy jewelry colors. Black, not so much. This at least is the natural black, and so in some lights it does look pretty dark brown, but let's be real, it's black. This is the Miles shirt jacket by Ozetta. A great pattern again. I love the construction. I had not done construction like this before. You have this lovely detail on the back here where it meets up with the sleeves. I changed the collar slightly. Well, first of all, I made it so that it was, did I make it not as high or higher? I changed this slant here some way. I don't remember now if I made it lower or higher, but and then her version, the real version, has like a stand-up collar, pretty thick one, and I decided I didn't want that. In part, the Lopi yarn is pretty scratchy, and around my neck I didn't want it. And then on her pattern, it has these lovely, like when you get down to the bottom edge, where like your thigh would be, it has detailing here where it like goes, what am I trying to say? It has not a split hem, but it goes up like this. But I didn't do that. I just did mine straight across, and I knit mine quite a lot longer than the pattern because I just wanted to use up this yarn. What else am I going to use it for? I had originally bought it for a Llamarino sweater, but I don't know. And now I don't know about this either, but anyway, I thoroughly enjoyed knitting it. It really didn't take me very long. Lettlopi knits up pretty quickly. I don't love the buttons. I'm okay with the ones I've chosen, but I think they're a little big. And it's just kind of blah on me. And I think it's mostly because of the black color. It's just not a color I normally wear. We'll see. It may get frogged and may get knit into the the you know, traditional Icelandic yoke sweater. We'll see. I have washed and blocked this because I intended to leave it as it is, and I may leave it as it is, but we'll see. I like to get use out of my knitwear, and so if it's just gonna sit there because it's not exactly what I want, I'd rather just take it back and re-knit it. I love the process of knitting, so I'm okay to rip a whole project back and start again if that's what needs to happen for me to use it. So we'll see. My last finished object for today, I absolutely love. This is the Kerr Sweater, Kerr, by CreaBea Knits. I just love it. I've worn this a few times already. I just finished this in beginning of January, and I've just been on a trip to New England, and so I wore it a few times up there. It was plenty cold enough, and this kept me plenty warm. So in the pattern, there are two options here. This is the narrow band, and then you can basically just double this up for a wider band. I hear my cat meowing, so she may come give us a visit in a minute, but we'll see. I knit this in Woolly Knits 100% British wool held double. I absolutely love this yarn. I love it. I will knit more from this yarn. I used the Skidor Nep colorway for the main color, and the contrast color is another Woolly Knits yarn, but it is their DK weight I'm not sure. It's on their website. It's a DK weight. It's not called Woolly Knit on their website, but it is from their mill. I'll figure it out and put the name down below. And again, I love that too. The DK weight was just held single. And the British wool held double. I did put, I think, 5 extra rows. I like this sleeve shaping detail. It's very clever. Well, it's using short rows. I think I did add 5 more just knit rows between doing the short rows and when I started the pattern, because the idea is that when it's on, the 2 pattern bands line up. And so I kept trying it on, and I just felt like I needed a couple more rows. So anyway, with the additional rows, they line up great. The back lines up a little bit less than the front. Yeah. It was using measurements. It wasn't like knit X number of rows. It was like knit until it measures X amount. And I just felt like the back and the front were a little different. So I don't know what I did, but the back ended up a little lower than the front. It's not super noticeable, and I thought it might bother me, but when I washed it and blocked it, it came out a lot, and who's gonna be looking at my back? Let's be honest. So yeah, I'm really happy with it. Again, I probably could use maybe another inch in the length. I definitely have to change the sleeves. I have realized on this last trip that I've just been on, and I've worn a lot of my sweaters a lot, I have a tendency to knit the sleeves too short. And these ones are knit a lot shorter than I would like them to be. When it's cold out, I want them to be like here, cover my wrists, they're gonna get cold. The only issue is I'm almost out of yarn. I don't want to buy more yarn just to add a little length to the sleeves. I had planned on knitting, or I am planning on knitting another one of these. I had bought this Tuku wool DK weight yarn. This is H31 Ava, AAVA. It's actually probably color 121. This may be backwards for how you're looking at it, but I plan to make the Havas sweater with this by Ronya Hakaleto. I am sorry if I'm mispronouncing the name. She has a beautiful Instagram account and some beautiful patterns, and I bought this to make her Havas sweater. I cast that on a while ago. Clearly I tend to modify things a little bit, not too much, but a little bit, and it has like a diamond shape cable pattern, and that's supposed to be on the front and the back, and then the sides have garter stitch. And I just decided that maybe I would just put the cable pattern on the front of the sweater and not the back as well, both for simplicity and just I didn't know if I wanted it on the front and the back. But what ended up happening was, which should have accounted for, was that the back, because I wasn't cabling the stitches, ended up wider than the front of the sweater where I was cabling the stitches. And this yarn has a lot of spring to it. It's quite, doesn't feel stretchy when you pull it, but when it was knit up in that pattern, it had a lot of give to it. And it just, the splits on the side were not going to be right on the side. They were going to be closer to the front because the back then ended up wider than the front. So I tore it back. And then I decided, well, maybe I would make another Kerr sweater out of this color because I loved knitting this pattern. I can make the Havas out of something else. And I thought this would be a really nice color to make this sweater in. And so what I was going to do, maybe I have a little more than I thought. So these two little balls here are my leftovers of the Skidoo Nep. Nah, that's gonna be plenty. This is my oh, I know why, okay. This is the leftover from this sweater. There's a little bit more than this left over, and I've paired it because this yarn I held double for the body of the sweater. So this one I would hold single because it's DK weight, but I was going to use this yarn for the contrast color. And so this I wound up two little balls of the Skidoo Nep, and I paired it with Drops alpaca yarn that I've had in my stash for a really long time. So I'm not sure how well you will see this, but I was going to hold one strand of Skidoo Nep and one strand of the Drops alpaca. And I think that would make a really nice contrast color against this. It just brightened this up a little bit, but it wasn't too bright. In order for me to have enough, I did weigh, I weighed how much yarn I used for the contrast color. Off the top of my head, I think it was 42 grams of yarn. So in order to have enough here for the contrast color, I do need to use some of this as well. So if I need some of this to lengthen the sleeves, I'm not gonna have enough for the contrast color. I think that's true. I might have to weigh again. So lengthening the sleeves takes priority. I do want to lengthen the sleeves. It will be much more practical, and it was annoying me a little bit that I had to keep pulling my sleeves down. So that takes priority. I did just figure out the other day a different yarn that I could use for the contrast, and now I've forgotten, but just stay tuned. There will be another Kerr Sweater happening with the tuku wool. And this didn't take me long either. I've realized that, excuse me, when I actually just sit and knit, as opposed to knitting a few stitches and then checking my phone, knitting a few stitches and being distracted with something else, I can actually knit pretty fast. So I just need to get on with it. My work in progress right now, well, this is really my only work in progress. I have another swatch on the needles. I tend to only work on 1 or 2 projects at a time. I find that if I get easily distracted with all the pretty things, and if I cast on a whole bunch, then I get indecisive and don't know what I should work on, and then don't work on anything. So it's better for me if I just have 1 project, maybe 2. I don't mind having like a sweater and a smaller project just to, you know, or I like to knit sweaters a lot, but so even if it's like a cabled and a plain stockinette stitch, and I love stockinette stitch, I love it. But this is the Winter Tales Blanket Shawl by Ozetta. I'm just going to take my bracelet off for a second because it's going to get caught up. I'm mid-row, which I never normally leave my work mid-row, but of course. So this is going to be a pretty good size shawl, hence the name Blanket Shawl. You create, you know, the slanted edge, and then you knit just straight across here for a little while, if you can see that, and then you go back up the other side. So I have started going back up the other side, just a few rows into that, you can see, and it forms this nice little border as you go. The flat section in the middle, I did add a few more rows. Again, it's not done by rows, it's done by inches across, but I did add a little extra in there. I just put it around me a couple times and tried to see how wide I thought I would want it. But I'm loving this. It's, you will just wear it, I think, this way when it's done. But it's gonna be so warm and cozy. It'll be more like this. I'm gonna try and insert some pictures of things after the fact. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, it's very sheepy and I love it. I am using just a single strand of Plotulopi. I don't remember this colorway, but I do have the colorway still, so I will put it in. It's like a mid beige. It's not the lightest one that they do, and it's not the darker one. So it's my first time knitting with Plotulopi. I have broken the yarn a couple times. It is unspun, as I'm sure you know, so it is pretty delicate, but for the most part, and I am just knitting a single strand by itself with nothing else, so this is about as fragile as it's going to get. If you're holding it double or if you're holding it with mohair, it would certainly add a little more, you know, make it a little less fragile while you're knitting with it, but I haven't had too many issues. The most times that I've broken the yarn has been when I'm moving the work around, and I'll just pick it up and not be paying attention and I'll snap that, but it splices back together, no problem at all, and it's not a big deal. So I think I should have this one finished fairly soon. It's all I'm knitting on at the moment. And I'm looking forward to it being done. It's been a really nice, just relaxing garter stitch knit. It's a no-brainer. I don't have to look at my work while I'm knitting unless I'm doing cabling or color work. If I'm just knitting and purling, I don't have to look. I can just knit away, and I'm very happy. I'm enjoying that very much. And I would knit another one, but I probably don't need to, so we'll see. The only other thing that's on my needles, and it's not really on my needles yet, this is still a swatch, but this is a pattern by Knitting for Olive, sorry for crinkling, called the Winter Hood. I really wanted like a balaclava, or yeah, a balaclava. And there's a lot of nice patterns out there, but I liked this one. I like that it has the little bit of the vest here, so if you have your jacket open a little bit, it looks like you maybe have a sweater on. And you might have a sweater as well if you're wearing a balaclava, but yeah, I like it. Pretty simple. It's stockinette stitch with a ribbing around the edges here and a ribbing around the face opening. The pattern calls for Knitting for Olive heavy merino held with 1 strand of silk mohair. I don't have that yarn, and I have a lot of yarn in my stash. I am not having a no yarn buying year, but I am trying to be a little more conscious about what is in my stash and using up my stash and being a little creative with yarn choices and things. So this one, I did not get out the bands before I started recording. I just went for it. I'm sure I can find the colors. I'm gonna guess the colors. We'll see. These two for sure are Madeline Tosh merino singles, and I'm holding both of these along with a Knitting for Olive silk mohair. And together they are making, haven't knit enough of the swatch yet, but together they're making this fabric, and I really like it. It's very soft. It has a really nice subtle pink marling to it, almost a little purple in there as well. Yeah. The Knitting for Olive silk mohair it's 70% mohair, 30% silk, and it is in the colorway Gammelrosa. It's just a dark, dusky pink. I think Knitting for Olive is my favorite mohair. I also really like Ozetta, but you can't beat the color choices. It's a nice company, and it's nice color choices. These two, these are superwash yarns. When I first started buying, I never talked about getting back into knitting, but anyway, when I first started buying yarns, I got a little carried away with all the pretty things, and I bought a lot of superwash yarn. I didn't buy a lot of sock yarn, but I bought a lot of merino singles. They're not my favorite anymore. I'm not just talking about these, but I like non-superwash yarn. I've come to the conclusion. I like the toothiness, I like the warmth, I like the rustic. I'm not too sensitive to wool. I know I said the Lettlopi does itch me a little bit around the neck, but even this Plotulopi, I've held that around me several times. It doesn't feel itchy at all. If you have wool sensitivity, it's gonna be, I would imagine it would be a little, you could be easily sensitive to it if you have wool sensitivities. I would imagine it's pretty rustic yarn, but for me it doesn't bother me. Yeah, superwash, what do I say? It just feels a little plasticky to me somehow, synthetic. Doesn't have synthetic yarn in it, but just with the treatment from the superwash, it just changes the feel of the yarn. It's almost like a little, I don't know, not my favorite. I believe this one is Parchment. It's probably like a very subtle lilac with hints of pink and a few spots of darker purple. I think it's focusing. This one, I believe, I really like the colorways of both of these. I believe this is Wet Clay. I will check because I could be wrong and I do have the tag still. This is a brighter pink, again with some like dusky purples in it. These are very much my colors. These are very much my colors. So anyway, my swatch so far, I haven't washed and blocked it. I'm probably not going to be that concerned about it with it just being the hood. My swatch as of right now is pretty much where it should be. So I think I'll probably just knit a couple more rows just for the heck of it, and then I will pull this back. I'm not going to wash and block it. I've knit enough out of these merino singles with mohair to know that it's not going to change too much for me. I haven't had a big problem in the past. And then I'll get knitting. So stay tuned. I think, yeah, that's the only thing. They're the only things on my needles. The next part's interesting. So, yeah, I got back into knitting seriously maybe about, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, somewhere around there. It was probably around 8 years ago. It was 8 years ago that I discovered Instagram, because a friend of mine kept saying, you should go on Instagram, you should go on Instagram. I'm like, I don't want to go on Instagram. I already have Facebook. I don't need another social media thing to take my time. And she was like, well, you like knitting. So I must have been a little into knitting. You like knitting, you'll find knitters on Instagram. I'm like, come on. Oh yes, you will find knitters on Instagram. And I've been hooked ever since. So to looking at knitting on Instagram and to knitting. That was the eye-opening, wow. Indie dyers, this whole community, the movement behind like sheep to needles, and what can I say? I'm here, I'm hooked, I love it. I knit all the time. I also love spending time just looking at patterns and picking out colors of yarns. I spend way too much time looking at yarn to buy without actually, I will say I've got way too much yarn, but at this point I don't buy a lot of yarn now, so I'm just really trying to use up at least some of my stash. I did, however, go a couple weeks ago to it's called the Farm to Fiber Day. It's in Massachusetts, just west of Boston. It's at a plant nursery, and they do this now twice a year. It used to be part of the regular farmers market, and I think they were one year kind of shocked at just how many people showed up. People come from Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, New York, Connecticut, and it just really took off. Yeah. So this year they had over 40 different fiber vendors. It's mostly all people selling yarn, mostly wool, but also alpaca. They have a couple of food vendors just to keep the troops happy. And they have a couple, like they had a lady and her husband who were selling drop spindles this year. They have a couple of people doing spinning demonstrations. There was a local spinning guild there, I think with 3 ladies from it, and they were each using a different form to spin with. So one had a drop spindle, one had a spinning wheel, and the other lady had some other kind of spindle that I'm not too knowledgeable about. There's a couple of people who sell, I'm not sure, like locks from sheep, like long wool locks that they've dyed fantastic colors, and you just buy like a small bundle of the ones you want. So I wanted to go. I already knew that I was going to be restrained. I didn't want to buy I didn't want to buy too much. I just wanted to go and enjoy the day, and if I found a little bit of yarn, that was okay. And I actually thought that I would buy maybe some alpaca yarn, because I remember in the past there being alpaca yarn there, and I haven't knit with alpaca yarn yet. I was probably looking for a blend, or maybe to hold it with something else, because I know there's a lot of drape to alpaca yarn, but I definitely want to try alpaca yarn. So my boyfriend and I went. He got to come up and visit me while I was up there, and he's a good sport about the house being taken over with yarn and me knitting every night and indulging in my hobby. So we went, and almost right away I found some beautiful alpaca yarn, and so I said, I'm not buying anything until we've walked around everywhere. I want to get a lay of the land, and then I'm just gonna pick out 1 or 2 things, and that's it. So I knew I had my eye on that, and then we went inside, walked around. Everything was beautiful, don't get me wrong, but like I say, I was not overly tempted to begin with. I knew that I only wanted to buy 1 or 2 things, that was it, if anything. If I didn't buy anything, that was okay too. Well, I came across this beautiful yarn, and I felt like it was different to color combos that I'd seen before. It feels really nice. It's rustic, but it's not too, I'm not sensitive. It's not super rustic. It is rustic, but it's not like Plotulopi or some of those yarns. This is, the lady who was working at the stall is not the person whose yarn it was. So I didn't get to meet the lady behind the yarn, but this is from Pear Tree Farm in Vermont. Her name is Holly Partridge. I did look for her last night on Instagram and I did not find her. This is her label. And it's a sport weight yarn. As you can see, it was not inexpensive, but it's not an inexpensive yarn. It was, the lady raised the sheep and had the wool processed, and then she dyes the yarn herself on the farm. I don't mind spending a little extra money at times when it's something special. So I only bought 1 skein. I'm kicking myself for not asking at the time, but they had a beautiful cowl on the display knit up from this yarn. It's kind of a color changing yarn, but these, and clearly these are colors, but they looked really nice and subtle in the knit up in the cowl. But I didn't ask the name of the cowl, so I don't know what it is. But I think that's probably what I'll make from it. I'll probably find a lace cowl pattern that I like, or something like that, because it's just 1 skein. 390 yards. It's a pretty generous amount of yards, so I'm sure I'll find something fun to knit with it. So this turned out to be my only yarn purchase, but we went down a rabbit hole instead, as you'll see. So we went to another section. They had so many vendors this time that they were kind of in different sections, and there was the greenhouse section that I think I might have missed altogether the last time I went to this thing, but we went in there and there was a lady, 2 ladies actually, sharing a stall. They were friends, and they were both shepherdesses. They both had sheep, and they were selling yarn, but one lady also had 3 sheep fleeces with her. You can see where this is going. A lamb fleece and 2 sheep fleeces. And I was immediately drawn to one of the sheep fleeces. I loved the color. I loved its softness. I loved its sheepy smell. I loved the picture accompanying it of the sheep that it came from. And I said to my boyfriend, I think I might buy a sheep fleece. And he's like, why would you do that? I said, well, I've been wanting to learn to spin for a while. I've been watching some of my favorite podcasters dive right in, and what better way to do it than buying a whole sheep fleece, right? So anyway, I walked around. I didn't just impulse buy, but yeah, I came to the conclusion that yes, I wanted to buy sheep fleece, and I was just gonna give it a try, see what happened. So excuse me for the crinkling noise just for a minute while I just show you the bag. I came home with Teeny. I did get some locks out of the bag. I haven't really been through it too much. Teeny is a Shetland ewe, and the fleece is beautiful. I don't have comparison. I did not have comparisons. The fleece is very clean. It doesn't have much VM in it at all. She kept the fleece from the breeches, so the back of its legs, they're in the bag, and she said they're kind of on the bottom of the bag, a little separate from the rest. Not everybody likes to keep that part, but she does. Okay, I'm all in. So this part is from its breeches. It's like hair. It's really soft. It's long. It's pretty. It's sheepy. I'm in love. Okay, and then this part is a sample of the rest of it. It's pretty crimpy. It's still pretty long. It's pretty variegated in color. There's definitely light spots and dark spots. This is a much more rusty color than some other parts are. And this fleece weighs 2.5 pounds, which from what I understand is, well, Shetland sheep are not very large, so it's on the lighter end, I believe, of fleeces, not of Shetland fleeces. They're pretty light to begin with. So that is Teeny. For the next week, while I was still in New England, I decided to see if I could find someone who would show me what to do with the fleece. And I made several phone calls, and I ended up going full circle and speaking back with the lady who I bought the fleece from at the Farm to Five a Day. And she very kindly agreed for me to go to her house. She lives in this beautiful old farmhouse, and I spent 2.5 hours with her, and we just went through the very basic steps of how to prepare a fleece. It has already been skirted by her, but how to rinse it and scour it. Well, soak it, scour it, rinse it. How to start carding and combing. Then there's like a little vagueness in the middle, and then she very kindly let me try 2 of her spinning wheels. She had a Castle style spinning wheel and a Saxony style spinning wheel, and they were both single treadle, and let me tell you, you have to be a little coordinated to be able to spin. It was very difficult to get keep the wheel spinning in the same direction. I had a lot of issues with it coming back the opposite direction, so I was spinning clockwise and it kept wanting to go anti-clockwise. But I got better as the day went on, and as with anything, right, practice. Yeah, I just had a lovely time. And then before I left, we went outside, and her sheep live there. She has a small holding. And yeah, my sheep is pregnant right now, and all the sheep were happily having a snack on the Christmas tree that had not long been discarded, I guess. And apparently sheep like to eat Christmas trees, so they were having a little winter treat. But I got to meet all the sheep, and they were all Shetland except for one Romney, who looks a lot different than the Shetland sheep. But they were all friendly and happy, and yeah, I'm glad I got to meet the sheep that my fleece came from, and to thank her for her beautiful fleece. So from there, I decided to go up to Maine for a couple of days before I came home. Maine is my happy place, and I thought, well, since I'm up here, I feel like South Florida is not the epicenter for fiber arts, unfortunately. It's very hot here. You don't really need wool sweaters and things very often. You don't have long cold winters where you have to stay inside, although you tend to have long hot summers where I like to stay inside. Yeah, so not the epicenter for fiber art. So I figured, well, while I'm traveling and I'm up north, I can look to see if anybody is maybe selling an antique spinning wheel or any spinning wheel, and to see if anybody might have any more sheep fleeces for sale, because why not? I figure I wouldn't be finding them in South Florida, so might as well make hay while the sun shines, so to speak. So I did not have much luck with the spinning wheel. There was plenty of spinning wheels for sale that I found, but I was surprised by how well they hold their value, which I guess is a good thing if you want to get into this hobby. It is not that inexpensive to get started with, but I guess if your wheel holds its value and then you change your mind at some point, that's a good thing. So I didn't find a wheel, but I did find sheep fleeces. So I went out and visited this lovely young lady. She had just finished school. She lived with her parents still on a pretty large farm. They had a lot of different animals, but mostly sheep and a couple of alpaca, some horses, donkeys, geese, ducks, chickens, dogs, a whole menagerie, as you often find on a farm. And so I went and met with her one very cold afternoon, and she kindly brought down from her barn a whole assortment of sheep fleeces. They have mostly old English baby doll South Downs, I think is what they're called. From here on out, just to be called baby dolls. That is the main breed that they have on their farm, but they also have a couple of other breeds and other things that the baby dolls are crossed with. Yeah, I went a little crazy, and this is just how I roll, so it's probably too much, but I figured this will keep me busy for a long time, and I don't know when I'll have another opportunity to buy sheep fleeces so easily. So from her, I bought 4 fleeces. So I now have 5 full fleeces. The Shetland one, I think, being the lightest one of all. So the ones that I bought from this farm were not nearly as clean as the ones that I bought from the Fiber Day. They're not dirty with anything that you wouldn't want them to be dirty with, but they have a lot more hay in them and a lot of dust in them. I'm allergic to hay, so I'm going to touch these minimally. I haven't even been through the bags yet, so I just took a small amount from each bag just because I wanted to show you on here what I bought. I'm going to start with with this one. This is from a lamb. So from what I understand, the lamb fleece is a one-time thing. It's sheared as a lamb, and then after that it's a sheep. So the lamb fleece is the softest shearing that you'll get. Yeah. So this is my lamb fleece. It will be interesting to see how much washes out. I think that this will just be an off-white color, maybe quite a creamy off-white, but I think once it's scoured and washed, is this focusing? I don't know. Once it's scoured and washed, I think it should just be an creamy off-white color. As you can see, there's lots of vegetable matter in there. Okay, the lamb's fleece is from a baby doll. There's a baby doll lamb's fleece, and it really is like a little baby fleece. It's very soft. The next one, actually to me feels just as soft, is another baby doll fleece, but it's a lamb's fleece. Sorry, it's a sheep fleece, not a lamb's fleece. And this one is from a male, but a male who has been castrated. Apparently, from what I've read, male, like fleece from a ram, sometimes has a stronger smell to it, and also sometimes not as fine in that the rams have more stress than a castrated sheep, in that they have the pressures of breeding and what have you. So, but I think a castrated male sheep is called a wether. And so the fleece from wethers, apparently, from my novice research, are often softer than a ram's fleece. So this is my beautiful baby doll sheep fleece. And as you can see, it is like a grayish brown. She had them all sorted already when I got there into like basically into different shades. She had some much darker than this, but I tend to not wear things very dark, although I realized afterwards that you can easily blend. You could blend it like a darker fleece with a lighter fleece and end up with somewhere in the middle. So something to think about for next time. But this, I think, is going to be very variegated in color too. Again, I just grabbed a handful from the top. And as you can see, the locks on the baby doll, I was a little concerned after I bought it that maybe it was even too short to spin, but I looked in the Fleece and Fiber source book, which is a fantastic resource, and I think the baby doll fleeces are short fleeces, so I think this is pretty normal. I think you have to card this as opposed to combing it just because of how short it is. I have a lot to learn, but we'll see. Okay, so that's the second of the 4. This fleece does not feel as soft, but I fell in love with this fleece the moment I saw it, and I was like, oh man, I want that one. This has a lot of hay in it. This is an Icelandic sheep crossed with a baby doll. So its fleece is really crimpy, as you can see. It's very floofy. It's a little longer than the baby doll locks, but yeah, it's very floofy. Apparently this sheep won I don't know, an award for its coat, but not in Maine. It was a transplanted sheep. It had come from someplace else, and when it lived wherever else it lived, it won an award for its fleece, although the fleeces change year by year anyway, so for whatever that's worth. And then the final fleece that I bought, since I didn't buy my alpaca yarn at the yarn thing, I was like, I'll just buy an alpaca fleece. Why not? This was the sweetest alpaca. Not that I've met many, but he was adorable. Oh my God, adorable. And this is his fleece. What? It is stunning. It's very variegated, as you can see. Creams and caramelly colors. So from what I understand with the alpaca fleece is in 2 separate bags. I just grabbed a handful from one bag, and I honestly don't know which bag. They are labeled, but I didn't check. Apparently with the alpaca shearing, this farm shears 2 shearings. Apparently some people like 3 shearings, in that they shear different areas. So I think if I remember rightly, one shearing is the neck fleece and the leg fleece, and the other shearing is the body. I think that's the difference. And I don't know which one this is, but when I start working with them, I will definitely keep a note of it. I asked the lady if there were different breeds of alpaca, because what do I know? And there are not different breeds of alpaca from what I understand, but that there are two different categories basically of their hair. And so there's Surrey alpaca, which I think most people have probably heard of as an alternative to mohair. And then there's this, which I think you pronounce it Huacaya alpaca. Yeah. And apparently this one is Huacaya. It's not Surrey. It is super, super, super soft. And she had some roving from a mill where she had sent some of it out for processing. And it was really interesting because she had it 100% alpaca and then like 50-50 with wool and alpaca. And then, well, she might have even had this 75-25, 50-50, and then 25-75. So she was showing how it is different when you blend it with wool. And so I think I would like to try blending it with some different things, because why not? This is experimental stage, so why not? And just see what happens. I'm inclined to keep my Shetland fleece as it is, like to itself. The Shetland fleece, from what I understand, again, I've got plenty of research to do, books to read and such, but apparently not everybody likes working with this, the breech part of it, because this is much coarser and not as soft. Excuse me. But from what I understand, what one of the ladies told me at the fiber day was that back in Shetland in the day, then the neck hair of the neck hair of the sheep is the softest section, and so they would use that. They would keep that bit separate, and they would use that for things like lace shawls or the ribbing of your sweater, so that the softest part of the sheep was against the most sensitive part of you, the wearer. And that then, like, the body of the sheep, the fleece from the body of the sheep would be knit up into, you know, things like sweaters, mittens, hats, what have you, and that the breeches part would be saved for things like socks or even rugs, things that needed like a harder wearing wool. So I'm intrigued by that, and I think that I have not messed with the bag too much. I think I will try and keep it as separate as I can and just see what happens. I plan on working with all of this in like little bits at a time, just so that I can try and get the hang of things. I did buy some scour. I research everything before I get it usually. I think this was about the most natural one I could find. And it just so happened that the lady whose farm I was at was using this one, or yeah, because she did a little, just a small demonstration with like a small amount of yarn, of fleece like this, just to show me how to soak it and scour it and rinse it. And she had this one, and it did not smell too strongly because I don't do well with strong scents. If it's all natural, it's okay, but like perfumed, strongly perfumed things, I don't do well with. So I think that will be okay. I have some combs on order. I have some wool cards on order. They should both be here by the end of the week. The scour just came today. Yeah. When I got home to South Florida, lo and behold, I did find an antique spinning wheel for sale down here. I don't have it here in this room with me, but I will, if I figure out how to insert pictures, I will put it in. Maybe like here. I found a beautiful, I love old things, a beautiful old Saxony style spinning wheel for sale, not far from me at all. So I went up the other day with a friend of mine and I bought it right away because it was lovely. It's a flax style spinning wheel, so it has a distaff, which I don't ever plan on using, but it has that, but it's snapped. And on closer inspection, it also looks like the distaff is 3 pieces. It looks like one of the pieces probably doesn't belong to that distaff, which I think happened a lot because a lot of the times those pieces broke, and so they just took pieces from other machines. It's okay. And then I put a drive band on it the other night. It's a double drive. I put a drive band on the other night. I watched a few videos on YouTube about how to set up your wheel, and it works, but I was having a hard time getting any uptake of yarn onto the bobbin. And I think that I know why, that it's because the bobbin, the whirl end of the bobbin is not tight enough. It's somehow come disconnected to the shaft of the bobbin, and so it's turning when the bobbin is not turning. So I happened to watch a video a week or so ago about antique spinning wheels and if it's a good idea for beginner spinners to buy them or not, and that lady mentioned a company or a couple who repair spinning wheels, and she had sent some parts out to be repaired with fantastic results. So I've already been in touch with the gentleman behind that business, and I've sent him a bunch of pictures and a little video, and we've kind of figured out which parts probably need fixing. And he's traveling right now, but once he's home, he's going to give me a quote on fixing that. I paid very little for the wheel. I was super lucky. I feel like I got a really good deal on the wheel. So I'm okay to spend a little bit to fix a couple of the parts. And this gentleman does woodworking, so it will look very much like it's all original still. I like to leave all things original, but I also would like it to be functioning more than leaving it untouched. So and I also need additional bobbins. That's I guess another issue a lot of the time when you buy an antique wheel, that they don't always have their extra bobbins with them. And if you want to apply yarn, you're going to need more than one bobbin. So he can make new bobbins. So I'm just going to wait for him to get back from his travels, and he's going to give me a quote, and we'll see if I can do that. In the meantime, because I'm crazy and I'm just diving right in. I'm not crazy, I shouldn't say that, but because I'm just diving wholeheartedly right in here, I have ordered the Ashford Kiwi 3, which seems to be a very beginner friendly wheel, and one that I've seen a lot of other people using of late. it is a castle style wheel. It's pretty modern in its design. I really like it. I got the 2 treadle version, and the treadles both fold up, which I think will be helpful. My house is not that big. It's a nice size, but I don't have a ton of extra space, so I feel like that would be good, that it can just fold up the treadles. And I think the whole assembly only weighs like 11 pounds or something. It is designed to be able to travel with it, so I think that will be useful. I like the portability aspect. I certainly won't be traveling anywhere with the antique one. It's pretty heavy and I think would be easy to break, whereas the Ashford is designed to be able to take it with you to places. So I'm looking forward to that coming. It should arrive on Friday. I have a lot of fleece prep to do. I don't think I'll be spinning anything on Friday, although the lady who I went to her farm, she very kindly, she showed me a little bit how to use the drum carder, and she carded some wool that she had there, and she gave me a little, I guess, a bat. So I do have a little bit that I could practice with. She also gave me a little piece of llama, excuse me, a little piece of llama roving. So I'm excited just to, I mean, I might get a piece of yarn. Not even enough to make into a little ball, I'm sure, but it'll be nice just to give that a little try too. So I do have some things I can practice with. I just want to take my time with things and do it. I don't want to say the right way, but just take my time, try and figure out what I'm doing. I have to find somewhere to dry all of this fleece as well. But being in Florida, at least I can put it outside. I'm just worried about if it starts, it's been a little breezy. I don't want any of it to blow away. I don't want any of the squirrels to take it to build a nest, although I guess if they need it, then they can take some. And I already thought that I might figure out a way, some of the leftover bits, the discard bits, I don't want to throw any of this away, but some of the discard bits, I might figure out some little contraption to hang outside that then the birds and the squirrels could take pieces of it if they wanted to build nests with. I think that would be cute. We'll see. I'll keep you posted on whether anybody takes any. Yeah, so I have lots of spinning in my future, hopefully. I have all the tools coming my way, and it seems like there's a lot that you need to buy to even get started with spinning, but that once you've bought those things, I mean, I plan on these lasting me, never want to say a lifetime, but I plan on these lasting me a really long time. And it seems once you've bought the basic, you know, the wheel, the combs, the cards, that's your basics right there. So I think I am in good shape, and I have a couple of books that I've bought that I'm having fun reading through and learning some different terminology and techniques. And I'll just say that it will be great if you want to stay along for the ride. There's going to be plenty of knitting and spinning in the future. So I'm going to wrap it up right there. I've spoken for way longer than I thought that I would. I didn't really have too much of a plan today. This was very impromptu. I've been thinking about it for a while. Do we really need another knitting podcast out there on YouTube? No, we don't. But I just figured, hey, why not? I'm putting it up there. I'm excited for my spinning journey to begin, and that was, I think, my motivation to just get it out there, see if anybody wants to join in, see if I can meet some more wonderful people, because this community really is wonderful. I also want to give a little shout out to Tangles and Starlight. Her spinning is amazing. And I've also been enjoying Young Folk Knits podcast, and she just got a Kiwi 3 not so long ago too. So it will be interesting to follow along with her spinning journey. There are so many wonderful people in this community, and I'm usually a part of it from afar, but I still feel like I'm a part of it, and I hope you all do too. And I think it's just a great space for makers and creatives and quiet people and whoever. I like it. So anyway, if this makes it to the internet, if you could like it, subscribe, follow along, I would be overjoyed. Just thank you for being here, and hopefully there's a next time, and hopefully you will all be along for the ride. So thank you, stay safe, be kind to yourself and each other, and I will see you next time. Bye.